Hey folks, what's up? This is Adam here. I can't see the guy. Welcome to the Movie Vault. I know you're noticing like a little bit of a difference here with the camera. It's because I'm using a new camera. You know, nothing wrong with my old one, but I just fancy the change. This camera is a Samsung and it's much more smaller and whatever. Another video for another day. But I'm coming back to reviewing Disney movies yet again. Let me set this camera just a little bit to this side. Yeah, that's much better. Okay, on with the review. Continuing my review with the Disney movies, and the movie review that I want to review today is The Sword in the Stone, which came out in the year of 1963. Okay, this was one of the films that I watched continuously over and over again in my childhood. Now, what's funny about this movie is that I've just rewatched it moments ago, still got enjoyment out of it, still had a kick out of it. But the problem is that this movie has more problems than I thought. You know what I mean? This movie does have a lot of problems. But with that being said, I'm still glad it was part of my childhood. I used to watch it continuously on the VHS tape again and again and again because I love the story to it. Well, if you could call it a story, I'll get to that in just a moment. And me and my friend Jason, you know, when we were kids, you know, we were always watching this movie, you know, continuously over and over and over again. Because we like the songs to it, whether it will be What Makes the World Go Round, Merlin's song when he's doing his packing, Hicketus, Hicketus, Hicketus Pucks, and all that kind of stuff. Madam Min's song, The Glorious Madam Min, you know. There's not many songs in this movie, unfortunately, but the ones that are in are quite memorable. But I've just watched this movie moments ago, and I realised that there is a lot more problems in this movie that I wasn't aware of when I was a kid. Basically, what this story is about is called The Sword in the Stone. But what's funny about this movie is that the Sword in the Stone is mentioned like right at the start of the film, because it tells a story that the great King of England has died, and whoever pulls the sword from the stone becomes the next King of England, you know. But many people have tried to remove the sword from the stone, but have not been successful. They don't have the strength to remove it, so therefore nobody's the new king. And now the new England is now like in a dark age. And they say the sword is now forgotten. And believe me, that is true. The Sword in the Stone is forgotten because it's not mentioned again until the last act of the film. It's called The Sword in the Stone, but the Sword in the Stone doesn't come relevant till like the last act of the movie. Throughout the whole movie, it's about Merlin, the wizard, and his companion Archimedes the owl, educating Arthur, or AKA Wart, and learning him lessons, you know, teaching him about life, you know. And nothing comes of that either. I mean, I will get to that in just a moment. But like I say, it's called The Sword in the Stone, but the sword doesn't come relevant until the last act of the movie. You know, throughout the whole movie, it's about this kid called Wart and overcoming obstacles, learning new lessons from Merlin, and that's what it's about. So like I say, it's about this boy called Arthur. He's nicknamed Wart because of his size. And I noticed the first slight problem with the movie, and right at the beginning, the voice actor for Arthur is done by 3 different voice actors. You know, and I never noticed that when I was a kid, but when I noticed watching it moments ago, I'm like, the voice sounds funny. I mean, the actor who did his voice at the start of the film, you know, where he's in the woods with his older foster brother, Kay, hunting the deer, and he's standing, he's like lying on the tree. His voice seems like more childish, like. But when he eventually meets Merlin in the forest, the voice is like a little bit deeper and it sounds different. And then when I looked it up, I was right. The voice actor is 3 different voice actors for the kid Wart. You know what I mean? And I think to myself, why did they do that? Why couldn't they have just reshot the whole movie with just one voice actor? And they said the excuse was because the first voice actor was going through puberty or something, and his voice was very croaky and he couldn't fit the Well, basically could get the job done. So they hired these two other kid actors who were brothers to do the voice of Wart throughout the whole film. So that's the one thing I noticed. So we've noticed two problems so far: the fact that Sword doesn't become relevant until the end of the movie, and the fact that the voice acting for the kid Wart is done by three different actors. But basically, he's in the woods trying to find the arrow that Kate shot, and he missed the deer, and now Walt goes looking for the arrow, but when he finds it, he goes crashing through the roof of Merlin's home in the woods. Merlin predicted this because apparently he can see like into the future. So far into the future that he's discovered planes and trains, because he introduces like this model train to Wart, saying it won't be invented yet for hundreds and hundreds of years. So he can basically see things before it happens. We get introduced to Archimedes the Owl, who in my opinion is a likeable character. A lot of people say he's annoying at times, but I generally find that he's a very lovable character. Who can ever forget the tower scene with the high-pitched laughing, when Merlin is like trying to fly that model plane and he goes crashing into the water and he's laughing hysterically. But basically Merlin takes a shining to Arthur, or aka Wart. I'm just going to call him Wart. And he wants to become his tutor. And he wants to basically guide him through life, educate him, make him learn how to read and write, teach him valuable lessons about life, putting him in situations where he learn things to get out of mischief and get things out of danger and things like that. So after when he does that great song, that Hickety Pocketus thing, and packs all his things, he follows Wart back to the castle. We learn that Wart's been fostered by this knight, this guy who owns the castle, and his son Kay. Merlin says he wants to stay at the castle, so he ends up staying in the Northwest Tower. That's rickety. And from then on, throughout the whole movie, it's about Merlin educating Wart. The first lesson, he turns him into a fish, and he's in the water of the castle, and they sing that song, "What Makes the World Go Round," which I love to sing constantly over and over again. He gets bugged by this frog, and then he gets chased by this larger fish. So basically he's teaching him things along the way. There's even a scene, where Wart's being punished, where he's acting like the slave of the castle, doing all these chores, doing all these cleaning up duties in the kitchen. I love the kitchen scene, where Merlin puts a spell on it and all the dishes start washing themselves and everything. What else is there? There's a squirrel scene, where Merlin turns Wart into a squirrel and a squirrel himself, and we come across that bizarre scene from a Disney film where this little girl squirrel is attracted to Wart, and Wart needs to learn about nature and the birds and the bees, so to speak. But in my opinion, for a Disney film, this was pretty creepy, because he's running away from the girl squirrel. The girl squirrel's chasing him. She's kissing him, hugging him, and even though Wart's saying, no, I'm not interested, she continues to force herself on him, so, like, trying to fuck him, you know what I mean? There's no fucking scene, but it seems that way, it's like she's sexually harassing him, because although he's trying to say no, he's not interested, she keeps following him, chasing him, and forcing kisses on him, forcing hugs on him, and the same thing happens to Merlin with this fat female squirrel, and the same thing's happening to him. So that was like a bizarre moment in like the Sword in the Stone, so to speak. But basically we learn that there's a tournament coming up, and whoever wins the tournament becomes the King of England, because there's no success with the Sword in the Stone. In the meantime, Wart's trying to become a squire. At one point, Merlin becomes upset by this, and he ends up blasting away to Bermuda. And what else is off-putting about this movie also is that throughout the whole movie it's about Wart learning all these lessons, But yet he doesn't really use them for anything. I mean, the tournament at the end, that could have been the perfect opportunity to demonstrate what he's learned from Merlin. Before I forget this moment, I want to talk about, which is my favourite scene in the movie, is the Madam Mim scene, you know, where walks a bird, Archimedes teaching him how to fly, and they end up meeting the Wicked Witch in the woods. And that's when Merlin and Madam Mim have that showdown where they turn into each other into animals, a wizard's duel, you know, a wizard's duel battle. That part was fun, you know, but Merlin turns himself into a germ while Madam Mim's a dragon, and he ends up winning the battle. But again, it's all about making War learn lessons, you know. I'd say that's the fun part of the movie, the battle between Merlin and Madam Mim, where they're turning each other into different animals and having that big competition, you know, survival. You know, but when it comes to the end of the film, there's no way Wart can really demonstrate anything that he's learned. It's like it's been one big build-up for nothing, because the Sword of the Stone becomes relevant again at the end of the film, because he forgets Kay's sword, who's Kay's trying to fight to become the King of England. And then they come across the sword in the churchyard, and he easily pulls it out, you know. And then when he takes the sword to the tournament, he leads them back to the church. And then when they put the sword back in the stone, they try several attempts to try and remove it, and they can't. And one of the knights is like, give the boy a chance. Wart easily removes the sword again, and then that's when they are fully convinced that he's the new King of England for removing the sword from the stone, while he's still a boy. So now he's known as King Arthur. And then when Merlin returns, he finds out that Wart's the king, and that's basically the end of the movie. But it's just a shame, really. Wart couldn't have demonstrated anything that he learned in the tournament act, in the last act. You know, it's a shame nothing really came of that. And it's called Sword in the Stone, but the sword really doesn't come relevant until the last act. And it's mentioned in the prologue at the start of the film by the narrator, you know, but the sword becomes irrelevant throughout the whole middle of the film. And like I say, we have that little mix up with the voice acting for Wart, and the fact that all the lessons he's learned throughout the whole film, it doesn't come to anything, you know. However, that being said, I know throughout this whole movie review I've said that was the problems. You know, you can tell by the just the picture quality of the Sword in the Stone of the film. It's low quality, but it didn't spoil the film in any type of way. I still enjoy the film. I can't dislike the film because it was a big part of my childhood. Like I say, I enjoyed the songs, I like the characters. You know, excuse that. That was my text message that went off on my phone. But like I say, I still enjoy the characters. I still enjoy the songs. The story's strange but likeable at the same time. I wouldn't rank this as like one of the best Disney films of all time, though. I mean, you can list all your all-time great Disney films like Lady and the Tramp, 101 Dalmatians, Bambi, Dumbo, Robin Hood, The Little Mermaid, Pocahontas, you know. I would say Fantasia, but I think that film's boring. You know, that's another review for a different day. So, I wouldn't say it's like the best Disney film of all time, but it's definitely not the worst one of all time either. I'd say it was like somewhere in the middle. Well, somewhere like in the middle and in between. So you got your great Disney movies, you got your bad Disney movies, where this was somewhere like halfway down between mediocre and the bad level. You know, somewhere in between that quarter. But again, you know, glad I rewatched it. It was like rewatching a film back in my childhood again. You know, Sword in the Stone. And I do recommend it for Disney fans, but if you're one of those Disney freaks that are really into Disney, you really want to see a really great Disney movie, but I don't really recommend Sword in the Stone, because Sword in the Stone, overall, on the whole, I liked it, I enjoyed it, still do to this very day, but boy, it does have its fucking problems. So, be known, there are a number of problems throughout the whole movie in this department, but you soon pick it up. I mean, check out the Wikipedia page; it's all on there. But Sword in the Stone. Thanks for watching this, everybody. Please log around, comment and email me if you've got any questions, and leave all your thoughts and comments below. That's Sword in the Stone, everyone. Thanks for checking this video out. I've really enjoyed reviewing this. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching, everyone. Peace.